Okay, so I'm going to start off again really quick, and I'll do this recap of everything. This was the one I just did with you guys yesterday, so it'll kind of look like this. You can use the colors that you want. I'm using darker colors, one with a little bit of a lighter color, just so that way you can see. And I decided I'm going to use a flat brush. Okay, so again, with all of these, whether you're using the cakes or whether you're using out of the tube, you add water to it. That's what they're meant for. If you wanted to work thicker, you would not use watercolor. You would use pretty much anything else other than that, including wash. All right, we're going to start with the dry wash. Dry wash is simply, you're still adding water to your pigment, but dry paper. Okay, this works well for a small area in your painting. Depending on the type and the quality of the paper that you're using for watercolor, it's not necessarily great for a large space because you may see brush strokes in there. Notice I'm going to leave a little space in between the different ones, and I'm doing that so that way the colors will not bleed together. So the next one, and I'll change up colors so it's easier for you guys to see. Notice that for paint with watercolor, I like the two containers, one to start cleaning my brush, and this is the cleaner water just to make sure pigment's out of it. It's highly recommended. Do you have to do that? No, but it's really not a bad idea. Okay, so I'm not going to mind if there's a little pigment on here because I'm going to do my wet wash next. All right, so for my wet wash, I'll kind of slide this water to the side. I'm going to wet my paper. Now, if I was using like a yellow, which I'm not, take a look. So I didn't fully clean out my brush. I told you I wasn't going to, but you can kind of see there is a little pigment of color on that. So it does carry over. All right, so my wet wash is simply using the pigment on the wet paper. Now, if I wanted to get a darker color, I'm just going to use a little bit more pigment with a teeny bit of less water. This is great for a spot, a larger area in a painting, especially if you have a large area to cover. You can even use like a spray bottle if you wanted to. I do have some spray bottles here. You just want to make sure you only get wet what you want. Okay, so then the next one is going to be a gradation wash. I'm getting my colors ready here before I start. And yesterday I did a one tone with this, so maybe today I'll do a two tone. So for the gradation, I feel like it's easiest if you wet your paper first, like you would for the wet wash. And then here, I'm going to start with one color at the top, and I'm going to pull it down so it gets lighter. If I need it to get even lighter, I can get some of the pigment out of the paintbrush. If I need it to go darker, less water, and I can reapply and go over the top so that way it goes from darker to lighter. Now the gradation wash is really nice. If you have a sky, I always think of like those summer skies where if you look way up, you know, it gets that really deep, rich, dark blue color. Now notice too, I can actually even let a little bit of gravity do its thing by, see how it's coming, starting to pull it down a little bit, which is kind of nice. And I can blend this out a little bit just with a little water and a little blending. So, and I'm going to reverse that, guys. So I went from dark to lighter, and on the other side here, I'm going to go from, and I guess I'll go with green today. If I use sky colors, it'd be kind of cool to do that gradation wash. That would be a really nice spot to do that. Again, adding more water to lighten it up. And I want my colors to do a little blending. So I'm playing around with the amount of water that's in my paintbrush. Now here with my green, it didn't get as dark and rich as I want it to. So I'm going back on top with a little more loaded with pigment. Okay, and I can start to add water as need be to blend it down. Okay. So there we have a gradation, and I did it with two colors. You can do it with two colors or just with the one color like we did yesterday. All right, this next one, I'm going to get the glazing one started by just putting a color down. Now, so it dries faster, so I can really show you what it looks like. You can use either a wet wash or a dry wash. Now keep in mind, guys, for this glazing, it's wet on dry. So I'm going to put my wet layer down first. I'm going to need to let that dry before I go to the next one. So I'm going to skip around with a couple of these because they take a little bit of time or more than one step. All right, so we'll let that one dry and do its thing. Now for the next one, wet on damp, this is the one you may have to try more than one time. So with this, you know, it's up to you. I like to start with a wet wash. I can monitor how much moisture is on that little spot. So what I'm gonna do is, I guess I'll go with green. Now this is gonna be pretty wet and I need it to be damp, not like totally saturated wet. So I'm gonna show you, like you can see, it has a nice watery look to it. It's shimmery. I need that one to start drying a little bit, but not too much. So this is the one, if the first time it doesn't work out, you guys might wanna try it again because it's hard to get and achieve the effect. And the effect that you guys are looking for, it was going to be, oh, this is a good one, I use this one. Something like this, where the edges begin to kind of fan out a little bit into the color. You can still see it, but it's not a real precise line. Okay, so this kind of thing would work great if you're trying to show branches in a misty kind of atmosphere or a crowd of people in stands. So I'm gonna go ahead and try it. And if at first it's too wet and the whole thing bleeds together, then you can just go do it again after it dries a little bit. And you'll see it's gonna start to, and I'll just add a couple little things in there. You know, you can even add whatever you think. It kind of could be a cool background. And this is also really nice for blending colors together. And I'll show you that when we get started with our actual watercolor paintings. So see how you don't have a precise edge and it's starting to just kind of bleed out a little bit. So that can work really well for something of that nature. Now for your masking, how are we with time? We're good. Okay, perfect. For the masking, and again, I like using my flat brush, so it's nice to have a variety of some paint brushes here. All right, so for the masking, I already put the tape down. Let's say I was wanting to paint like a fence or a corner of a building or something like that. You guys are welcome to, first of all, you can, you know, put a layer of paint down and then put your tape on, or if you want to keep it the white, then of course you put your masking tape directly onto your surface. So we're just going to let that dry. And I just wanted you to see, you know, it really will take the shape of your tape very nicely. If anybody has done any painting in a house, sometimes you need to mask areas off. Okay, so there's that one. Now my soft edge, this is a fun one. So this is the one where, you know, if you go to the store, they do sell something called that liquid frisket, which is really expensive. The rubber cement does a nice job. If you're at home and you're working 100% remote and you don't have access, don't go and buy it. You don't need it. You know, you could even use just to show the resist like a crayon on there. So what's going to happen with this is when it dries, you can see where the resist took place. Okay, so I have that on there. I'm going to let it dry 100% before I rub off the rubber cement. Now the salt one, I want to go with a bit of a darker color on here so you guys can really see it. So I'm just going ahead and mixing a nice rich dark color, and I'm going to get my salt out. So I'm just using a table salt. This one has a grinder. If you use a coarser type of salt, you're going to get a little bit more of that speckled effect, like something like that. Okay, so with this, I'm going to make sure it's nice and rich and dark in color. If you use a light color like yellow, it's going to be really hard to see it. So I want to make sure that you guys can see the effect. Also, this one needs to be done when your paper is pretty darn wet. So it's kind of like a nice puddle. So now that I have like that puddle in there, I'm just going to grab a little, and a little bit goes a long way with this. So I'm sprinkling on a little bit of salt. Notice I didn't like just douse the whole thing. So I'm just sprinkling it on. I'm going to let that dry. So So I'm going to leave that to the side. Okay. So I didn't maintain my my dirty water in my clean water. So I'm just going to keep that in mind. Same thing as you should if you get overzealous. It always is nice to have one that's super clean. You can always swap it out. All right, I'm going to go back to, because this is dry now, for my glazing. So for the glazing, and I did grab yellow for this one.
So it says that you have 4.5 minutes left.
4.5 minutes left. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, for my glazing, with this one, it's dry. I'm putting color on top. I mean, it would be better if I let it dry a little longer, but just to show the effect. You can see the color beneath. You can see the yellow on top. The way that I look at something like this, it's nice if you have something that is kind of touched by the sunlight in the sun. It has more of a warmth feeling or a glow to it. Contrasting that, if you have an area of shadow, and let me just kind of get a shadowy color. I'll go with more of a purple kind of color. On top, notice that I have it pretty translucent. So I want to be able to see the two colors that are there. You can still see it. All right, but you see how you have the two and it gives that cool effect. It gives you the feel of shadow. All right, so this next one, I know we got to this one yesterday. I didn't get there with the other class until today, is with the, and I'll show you. This is just from, you know, my bathroom. It's just rubbing alcohol. Okay, and I know they come in different percentages. Any one is fine. I just know that we've used it before with a mix of water and rubbing alcohol for windows in the winter on the car. If they are, it actually helps the ice to melt. Okay, so that being noted, for the rubbing alcohol one, I want to also work with this while it is pretty wet. And I really like the effect of this one too. So I'm going to add quite a bit of water. I want it to be nice and dark. And I'm just going to cover an area like so. And then with a clean paintbrush, you can go in and you're going to actually dip it. This is just the cap of the rubbing alcohol. I can either tap it like this, or if I wanted to, I could touch it to the paper. This kind of has just a really fun effect for a background. Like let's say you have an object that you drew or a flower, and you just wanted to add like a little bit of texture. There's a lot of different things that we're going to do here to show various textures. So with this part, guys, I'm going to stop and I'm going to stop the video. This will be posted for you in Schoology. So let me just stop this recording.